One, two, three, four. My mic sounds nice. Check. One night. Oh. 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 Shit. Everybody keep talking about how I bite my lip. But y'all know that's how we do when we get down. That's a giant right there. All you got to do now. Oh, sucky now.
Whatever you do.
What's going on, Glenn? You got two R's in there, huh?
Whatever you do.
Oh, snap, snap, snap.
Do it good.
In New Orleans, we got this dance called the second line.
It's not.
And I'm gonna tell y'all a little bit about the second line. Let me kind of turn this down a little bit. Let me turn this down just a little bit. Like you're doing. Okay. When somebody dies, you're supposed to celebrate them because their suffering is over. So in New Orleans, we have this thing called the second line. The first line, they play these dirges and slow songs as they're marching the body to the graveyard. You might call it the cemetery. We call it graveyard because we old school, right? Once the body is lowered into the ground, then it's time to celebrate. That's the first. Going to the graveyard is the slow dirges. That's called the first line. That's when we're supposed to be mourning the person that died. Once the body is lowered into the ground, now it's time to celebrate. That's called the second line. And that's what we do. It's a New Orleans thing. But now everybody wants to have a second line for whatever. But my grandma taught me how to second line. My grandmother used to have this house right down the street from Charity on Perdido Street, 1811 Perdido. Our backyard was St. Joseph's Church, right off of Tulane. So we used to always go down the Canal Street. We would walk down the Canal Street to the parades and what have you. And when we were kids, you know, I'm from New Orleans, you know, so we started drinking when we embryos. But my grandma would give you a little taste. She said, give you a little taste to make your blood strong. I was like, okay. I said, Grandma, my blood weak, you know, so she give a little taste. It wouldn't be no more than a little wine, but you know, when you're shorty, oh, that's the thing. But my grandma used to grab her skirt and she said, grandson, you got to do it like this here. And I look at her, I said, come on, what you doing? She said, boy, you got to do it for them that can't do it for themselves. That was my grandma. Oh. Spread yourself. That's the joint right there. That's the joint. I just, with strangers, I met a woman who said she used to date my man, Charles, who made the song. And I said, I thought he was deceased. She said, no, he's still living. I was like, what? She says, yeah. She says, they still hold shows sometimes. I was like, all right, well, tell them I'm keeping them on the map because, you know, I have to express myself week in, week out. But let me kind of go ahead and get started, you know. I know what I look like. We're getting started here. Gotta hear my Roger. Doom, 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 doom. There we go. So first of all, I want to tell everybody good evening and welcome to tonight's show. the show that I had planned, I wind up zapping it and doing something totally different. Why? Because it just kind of popped in my head. So I'm making this up as I go along. For the last 3 months, I've thanked the everyday people who were somehow promoted or upgraded to essentials. And this kind of tripped me out when I thought about it. America had to kind of tell them something, because we needed you guys to bust your ass while the rest of us was in seclusion called quarantine. So, rightfully so, I told them thank you. Then I thanked those people that I shared the stage with for 41 years, healthcare professionals. I know what they're going through. I mean, as a healthcare professional, let's see, I went through, before it was HIV, it was called HTLV-3. I went through HIV. The first job I had was working with a virologist. I was 18 years old, injecting rabbits with the herpes simplex virus. Didn't know what a virus was, didn't know the difference between a viral infection and a bacterial infection, but this virologist, ophthalmologist taught me some things, and some of those things I applied to this. But I didn't give a special shout out to 2 professions in healthcare that being an administrator, the hardest 2 jobs to fill is the clerks. That's the people that work at the front desk, work behind the scenes. They get you certifications. They have to go to battle with the insurance company so that you can get the tests that you need so that we can find out what's going on with you. And more often than not, the diagnosis is made by radiology. You know what I'm saying? So if you need that CT, you need that MRI, you need the nuclear mass scan, whatever you need, it's those people that have to go to bat. And then they have to go to bat with the patients because the patients think that it's their fault if it's refused or whatever. And last but not least, it's the cleaning people. COVID-19 reminded us just how important cleanliness is. And the difference is when I came into healthcare, we were taught to wash our hands a certain way and inside out so that you would clean your nail beds and you do your thumbs and then agitate your fingers and up and you were going to be the one performing surgery. Hand sanitation was it was an afterthought. It wasn't a substitute for washing your hands. You were taught to wash your hands after you take your gloves off, so forth and so on. But no matter how dirty that room was, the cleaning personnel would come in, and you couldn't tell that you just had 4 pints of blood on the floor and that you just had, all of this yuck. People throwing up and defecating and all the things that happen before someone passes. So let me just take a minute and say a special thank you to those people that have to deal with the back end, no pun intended, of the coronavirus. And that's those people cleaning things up, the cleaning people. I thank the personnel, I thank the postman, I thank everybody, but usually if my show goes off, I thank you guys. But I've been doing these podcasts for almost a year now, and some of you have been with me since my very first show, my very first podcast. And when I go back and I look at some of my earlier podcasts, it was a little rough. I was learning my craft, and it's not to say that, I'm so seasoned now, but I've just learned a lot doing what I do. I have more confidence in presenting the stories and the information to you. So to you people that's been there for me, been here with me since day one, and those that have come in the interim and then become loyal followers, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. It means a lot to me. I wanted to open my show with that, and what reminded me of that is tonight's show is called Reflections. Do you hear what I hear? We're right here and we're not going nowhere. So it's a play on words. My very first show, the motivation was off-duty cop Amber Guyere, a Geiger, I can't remember what her name was, shot Botham Jean while he was sitting in his house eating ice cream. And she was subsequently convicted of manslaughter and given 10 years, but I keep following up to see what's going on with her, and at last check, she was still in lockup. But I'm sure one of the things that caused controversy after the fact is the bailiff, female black bailiff, stroking her hair and comforting her, and the black judge coming down off her stand and giving her a hug. And then they tried to justify their actions, one saying that, she was checking her hair for contraband. The other one was saying that, she asked her for a hug. As long as I've been watching, even in Perry Mason, the judge didn't come down off the stand and say, I'll give you a hug, good luck. No. So we didn't accept that. And the reason I bring it up is because in less than a year, we'll come full circle. And now we're talking about the same thing. But hopefully we're talking about it from a different perspective, because now, as I reflect, it seems that it's the perfect segue. Reflecting on why I did the show, reflecting on what's happened in 2020 thus far, the last 6 months, and reflecting on the fact that this is 20 years, 2 decades into this millennium, and just how topsy-turvy it's been. 2020 has challenged us, has tested our mettle. You understand? We've had our health, our fate, and our patience tested. So much so at times I feel like Cinque and Amistad. I just want to hold my hands up and say, give us free, give me free. But through all of this, I just realized how strong we collectively are. And I'll be honest with you. You guys have helped me get through first my quarantine, then my hibernation. And hopefully I've been there for you. I've had some off-air discussions with a lot of people about a lot of things, and they wanted to elaborate and they wanted to share their views and so forth and so on. But just in this last 6 months, we've weathered this deadly virus. Hit us somewhere around February, March. So for the last 3-4 months, we've been dealing with this thing. It forced us to re-examine our lifestyles and how we've been taking care of ourselves. There was a lot of people that came to blows with me simply because I said I could understand why we were disproportionately being affected by COVID-19 and coronavirus. And I said that it was some things that I had talked about in the past that being medications. And I said in one podcast, if you guys remember, you've been here for a while, I said in one podcast that prescription medications are drugs, and they're being pushed by conglomerates, not Pookie and Ray Ray on the street corners. They're being pushed legally. And one of the things I talked about is everything that goes into the body is either filtered by the liver or is filtered by the kidneys, which means that these substances we call medicines or drugs start to affect our liver and our kidneys. These are the things that produce, and I'm not going to an anatomy and physics class, okay, let me back up. These are the things that affect our immune system. Can't live without a liver, can't live without a kidney, you know. So when we started to see some of these things, I said that was secondary to some of the 5 or 6 deadly diseases that so many black people are seeing early in life. Heart disease, cerebral vascular and strokes, COPD, cancer, diabetes. And then I started to talk about things like immune deficiency diseases like, multiple sclerosis, AIDS, and things like that forces the body's own immune system to attack it and makes us susceptible to things that those of us with stronger immune systems just kind of blow off. So I don't want to get too deep, people. I just want to kind of educate as we move along. But it's forced us to look at our lifestyles and focus on taking better care of ourselves. So it just kind of validated a lot of the things that I've been telling you. And I know sometimes I talk like, your first year med students or what have you, but I want you to understand that it affects us all, whether we totally understand it or not. The other thing we had to deal with is in the midst of all of this pandemic, it served as a distraction. And Moscow Mitch and Delusional Donnie has been doing things, to shore up their lifestyle, to make sure that they're taken care of, even if they get voted out of office. So they push for tax breaks for the richest 1%. When they gave us the stimulus money, they gave us $1,200 checks, but they gave their friends $1.5 to $1.7 million checks. But the middle class was attacked again, because if you made over $75,000 to $150,000, you got nothing. So they've been kind of stomping, I say, on the Constitution and doing things that are illegal. But what has been reminding me, and I've always reminded you, that this is history repeating itself. So I'm trying to stay here. I'm trying to stay and not go off too much, okay? But they've been stacking the deck. And what brought this to mind was, as recent as yesterday, the Senate confirmed this young white boy, Justin Walker. He's 38 years old, and he's been appointed to the D.C. Court of Appeals. You said, why is that even important? So what? He's already a judge. He's never tried a case in court. Never. And why that's important is because sometime between 38 and 40, if 45 is reelected, this boy with his so-called conservative values, he's a protege of Mitch McConnell. He comes from Kentucky. He could be appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I promised I wasn't going to make this. I tried not to do two things. My strengths are policy and healthcare. And when the two match, I go to hell off, right? But anyway, okay, let's back up. If a 38 to 40-year-old so-called conservative is appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court, that's an appointment for life, which means he's going to be there from the time he's 40 to, if he lives to be 90, that's 50 years of creating laws that not only secure white privilege, but it negates things like Roe v. Wade and a woman's ability to choose what to do with her body. It negates things like Black Lives Matter. It negates things like we're starting to get older. They've been chomping at things like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, and social programs are no longer called rights. They're called entitlements now. So they're slowly but surely trying to take that back. But the truth of the matter is, when they go to the doctor, they could be multi-billionaires. The first card they pull out is a fucking Medicare card. And I say that because I've seen it with my own eyes. How you gonna come up in a chauffeur-driven limousine and play your Medicare card and then have the audacity to talk about those that really need Medicare having entitlements that they're not due? So excuse my French. Parlez-vous français? Just as we were starting to emerge from our hibernation, this whole COVID thing, we're trying to get back to a sense of normalcy, and we talked about a new norm, but we were reminded that the old norm still exists. So we were reminded, because we had this phrase I coined, is a preponderance of circumstances in a rapid succession. BAG, B-A-G, Brianna, Ahmad, and George. Now we can just go ahead and add Ray Nard to that. So we were reminded that we are still, if COVID-19 don't kill you, the cops just might. Then we saw something, because I've been talking about this, and I say I understand white privilege because poor white folks ain't got shit. All they could depend on, they literally may not have a pot to piss in and a window to throw it out. Mitch is the richest senator, and Kentucky is the poorest state. And they keep voting him in. Why? They don't have anything. They despise people that aspire to have more. All that they can hang their hat on is white privilege. So, I'm not going to go off. But this preponderance of circumstances woke up the have-nots. I've always been saying this is not about black and white or black and brown. This is a class war between the haves and the have-nots. I even drew the parallels between what's happening now and the founding fathers, the looters and the Sons of Liberties who became the founding fathers, and the things that they did. But suddenly we saw people of all races, from all socioeconomic walks of life, coming together, fighting for something, because this had become so ridiculous. That's a preponderance. It becomes so ridiculous that they can no longer ignore it. They finally had come to a conclusion that we want the same thing that they want. We want to be able to walk down the street, not necessarily with a 45 on each hip, an AR-15 over my shoulder, a shotgun in my hand, and a rocket launcher on my other shoulder. We just want to be able to walk down the street or jog down the street or eat ice cream in our own house. And what's so crazy, I did the Saturday morning rant, and something had been in my spirit that Friday night because I got so much flack because I said that Oprah could not tell my story. Because I said I had black women, primarily black women, coming at me saying, well, Oprah's black too. And I'm saying, I don't give a shit if she's blue. Her agenda does not align with what's best for me, what's best for my sons, my grandsons, or my granddaughters for that matter. Oprah has no children. Gail has a couple, but we won't even go there. All I know is my story could not be told by Oprah, so I got up Saturday morning and I started talking about why. I said, because if someone is running away from you, they're no longer a threat. And then it happened. Imagine how I felt. I felt like I had spoken it into existence. On the other hand, I felt like I had been delivered this message to say, and of all my podcasts, it's the one that's been least watched. And it's the one that I recommend most. So then we saw this happening. So if I had to sum up 2020, I said this is a hell of a way to start off this decade and this millennium. I know what you're saying. You're tired of hearing me preaching about 45 delusional Donnie, Moscow Mitch, and who's been appointed a federal judge and things that you have no control over. I'm saying, but we have to be. You keep telling me that I'm not really into politics. That's what you're saying. So we've been forced to pull our collective heads out of the sand, because now we're starting to understand that these decisions are made at the policy level by those people that we elect, that we call politicians. Once upon a time, they were known as public servants, but they've superseded that. They no longer serve us. They look to us to serve them and put them on a pedestal. What we see is a community now of have-nots that have come together, and it scares the bejesus out of them. Because imagine if everybody that's lower class and middle class and middle class and upper middle class with any type of conscience came together and demanded that these people that we elect do what we elected them to do. There would be an upheaval. And I'm not talking about progressives and Bernie Sanders, because to me that's just a changing of a guard. To me that's just young people who are not necessarily idealistic. They want their turn now. They don't want to wait. They don't like the system because they come in as junior representative and junior senators and they have quote unquote no power. And this is why I have the problem with this 38-year-old boy. He's never tried a case in court, and he's going to be presiding over people's future. So he's going to say yeah or nay whether some things even make it to the appeals court or the U.S. Supreme Court for that matter. Woosah. I know I went off. I know I've been preaching this thing. I've been trying to teach it and not make it preachy. I try to take the sensationalism out of it because you don't need somebody hollering and screaming at you for 30 minutes. But what I've been trying to teach is police brutality is not about race. Our real struggle for equity and equality It's a struggle for economic balance or economic green called capitalism. That's what it's really about. So Black lives in the current America, right now we popular. I can't remember any time in my 60 years where it's supposedly it's so good to be black, or so we think. I call us the flavor of the month, but tomorrow's Juneteenth. The idiot in charge had planned a Klan, not a Klan rally, what he called it? He called it a campaign rally in Oklahoma for tomorrow. But he got so much backlash, not just from America, but from around the globe, that he backed off. Then he went out and had the audacity to say that he made Juneteenth popular. Now, Juneteenth was celebrating the freeing of the slaves. In Saturday's podcast, my rant, my Saturday morning live rant, I talked about 1865 was the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. We went through a brief period of Reconstruction, and in a previous podcast, I told you about a president named Woodrow Wilson who undid all of Reconstruction by inviting somebody into the White House and airing this first movie to ever be aired in the White House was Birth of a Nation. And you know how racist it was. So it undid all of the progress that had been signed into law with Lincoln's signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Then that in 1911, that kind of issued in the beginning of the Ku Klux Klan. It went from being a little regional 7 guys on horses hiding their faces to almost a national thing. They started to get into political offices and what have you, so I'm not going to go off on that. But 100 years later, from 1865 to 1965, we were still fighting that. It's been 55 years since 1965. So it's been 155 years since the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. So in honor of Juneteenth, I'm letting you guys know why this pisses me off to the utmost of pissosity. I'm telling you why you should be upset. Because right now, I'm kind of comfortable. But I won't allow my comfort to become complacency because I've got grandsons. I got granddaughters. And whomsoever my granddaughters decide to be with, I don't want them to have to be with someone other than a black man because we are such an endangered species that one day we may not be. So, all right. Let me move on. So we're supposed to be celebrating Black Lives Matter. And we're supposed to all hunky-dory and, kumbaya and this, that, and the other. My trauma runs so deep, I still get nervous when I see a police cruiser. I still cringe when I see a police cruiser behind me. Because I don't want to be. We've been celebrating Black Lives Matter for almost 4 weeks now. But in that period of time, we've had one person that's been shot in the back in Atlanta, young Rayshard, running away from the police. And we had another brother in California who supposedly hung himself. So we go from modern day lynchings to actual lynchings. That's some bullshit of a major proportion. So when I talk about me being skeptical, so when my Facebook friends, when I say somebody like Oprah and I say this and I say that, and they come at me and they say, well, you need to be more forgiving. Because when somebody tries to repent, you can't just refuse their apology. And I'm saying that apology means nothing when I know America's history. That apology means nothing when I know that America promised my Indians ancestors that they could have these sacred lands, and then some white man found his way upon all those lands and said, wow, I found a gold tooth. There's gold in them there hills. And then they started killing off the Indians because they refused to give up this land. So, yes, I'm skeptical. Even with these people being charged with murder, it does not change the overall attitude, because let's be real about it. We have black cops who, for whatever reason, maybe they've been, and I'm not making excuses, because I have a lot of friends and family who are cops. And I believe in my heart of hearts that they try to do what's right and be good cops. But I know at times they're ostracized by the community. I know at times they become jaded. But we thought if we had more blacks on the police force that, we would get a fairer shake. That's not necessarily the truth. I cringe when I see these things because more often than not, whether Black Lives Matter, or whether we're in the heat of this thing, unfortunately, everything that we've accomplished has been done with the blood of a man or woman. So I don't want to be the next one, nor do I want you to be the next one in this saga of black man police end up dead, If we get anything out of this Black Lives Matter, from a political perspective and policy, that'd be great. But what I'd like us to do, you and me at a grassroots level, at a brother, sister, and this has nothing to do with the color of our skin, because I've got all hues in my family. I consider myself black simply because if you put the colors of a rainbow together, you get the color black. You don't get red, you don't get brown, you get black. So that encompasses my Poisson Blanc great-grandmother and my maroon African-looking father. That encompasses my red-bone mama, you understand? And some of these folks that are high yellow, and it just encompasses everything. I don't get caught up on that. What confuses me is, through all of this, if I could get us to get anything out of it, it's two things. Let's get more politically involved, and let's live better for each other. And I say that because we decide how we're going to treat each other. We don't need a law, an executive order from anyone. If we didn't listen to Jesus, so we have to make some decisions on our own. It's the choices that we make. And I'm going to tell you this guy's name, and then I'm going to leave this alone, but it's just been playing with my consciousness. His boy's name is Justin Walker. Look him up. You might could find the story on Microsoft or one of them, or Google. I know you can find it there. But his name is Justin Walker. He's 38 years old, and now he's been appointed. He's been appointed because he's going to continue the work that Mitch and Donnie are doing now. He's going to continue to make sure that these things that they've been working for are maintained. How we see ourselves should not be a reflection of how they see us. We see worldwide folks are coming up and apologizing and want to hug and apologize, and they want to hug and they want to apologize and they want to hold hands and kumbaya, and some wear their masks and some don't, and I make jokes about it. I say things like, I take my reparations in small unmarked bills. I say, a deed of 20 acres, forget the mule, just give me a pickup truck. That'd be fine. Because I'm a veteran. Every day somebody finds out I'm a veteran, the first thing they say is what? Thank you for your service. But it's empty. It means nothing. I don't get no EBT card. Lord knows I love to eat. Y'all see how I eat. I don't get anything. I'm fighting for health care for injuries sustained while I was in the Marine Corps. So I know the same thing is going to happen after we're no longer the flavor of the month. I know this because it's happened before. This is going to sound selfish. But the other thing I'd like to see come out of this is something that's been disappearing. I'd like to see more black men who are black men in positions of authority or power, however you define it. After all the affirmative action and all of that, it brought everybody along, and somehow we just fell out of the equation. They decided that if they hired a black woman, they got a 2-for-1, black and female. And then the white woman said, well, we're being discriminated against as well, so we should be included in affirmative action. So at some point, we said, we're the endangered species. We're like the white tigers, We don't want to be like the dodo bird. We don't want to be extinct. Okay. We're the first ones to be dropped out of the workplace. We're the most likely to be unemployed. We're most likely to suffer from chronic unemployment. We're most likely to die at the hands of violence, and we're most likely to die after a police encounter. We're most likely to have our lives disrupted by some type of intervention with the criminal justice system, because we cannot afford the lawyers to help us get a new start and reinvent ourselves. But after all of that, I just don't like the relationship. Now, I've dated all kind of women, black women, white women, Puerto Rican, Haitian. The only thing I never dated was a Vulcan because, I've never been to stuck clouded with you people. But I say all of that to say this. I don't seek out a particular type of woman. If you're attractive to me and you treat me a certain kind of way, if you value me as the king that I am, because I'm never going to be a pauper for anybody. I may not have the richest kingdom in the land, but I know when it comes to what I bring to the table, priceless. So if you treat me a certain kind of way, the color of your, and you know, how you, let me back up. Let me back up because I'll go off. I'll just, yeah, I'll just go off. But I just want to see us treat each other better. I want to see us treat the black man specifically better, especially within this race. This dead air space is me taking a pause so that I can kind of get some things out of my head and move on. But the last thing I want to say is this, people. We're colors of a rainbow. No matter who you are, what you are, how you built, how you look, your socioeconomic status, your color, your religion, your how you see yourself, your ethnic race. Let's come together and let's make this political process work for all of us. The one thing we haven't done is when we say we're not into politics, we allow ourselves to be mistreated. We allow ourselves to be put in a position where laws are not conducive to how we live and the things that we need. So let's be more proactive politically. If we do that, fewer families will have to bury their sons or their daughters or their brothers or their grandsons. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm sorry for screaming at you. I apologize. That's my show for tonight. As always, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I thank you in the beginning. I want to thank you one more time. I want to thank you for your love. I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for letting me be myself. I want to thank you for remembering that in the process, don't be so afraid to die that you forget to live. So, in parting, I want to tell you, go to my YouTube channel, listen to my podcast. Make sure you check out the one from last Saturday. It's one of my favorites. I'll see you here next week. Same Baptiste time, same Baptiste channel. It's always in party, love, peace, and hair grease. And thank you for letting me be myself. And no, I have no rights to this music other than the fact that when I heard this, I wanted to be a bass player. I wanna be myself. Different strokes for different folks. Good night, people.